Institute for the Advanced Study of Nonviolent Conflict at the Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy. And we're delighted to have you all here, as well as those who are viewing at home or in their offices. We have 4 award winners this year, but we also have 2 previous award winners sitting in the audience who I'd like to mention and ask to stand and be recognized. Both of these individuals were among our first 4 Lawson Award winners, and they are, first of all, Nada Al-Wadi, journalist from Bahrain, if she would stand and be recognized. And the second is Dr. Mary King, former University of Peace president. These awards were named after James Lawson because he is known historically for having been one of the most strategically astute leaders and practitioners of nonviolent action, of course, during the U.S. Civil Rights Movement. Everyone in this room, by virtue of his having been with us all week as our institute has progressed, knows him. Those who may be listening in their offices or homes may or may not be familiar with him, but I absolutely encourage you to Google his name, because then you will be surprised and educated and delighted, as we will be right now, because I've asked him to say a few words about his sense of the Lawson Awards. Jim.
Well, you should know that I am still astonished by the fact that the International Center for Nonviolent Conflict named this award after me. I never anticipated such a thing, and I've tried to be appreciative to both Peter and Jack and the whole staff for the linkage with my life in that way. I want to just simply say how deeply proud I am of that fact, because I've spent, as some of you know, a lifetime trying to reflect nonviolent living as well as nonviolent practice in every fashion possible. You do not know that Dorothy and I have 3 sons, and we never spanked any one of them in the process of child rearing, because we thought there were better ways of being in discipline, better ways of teaching. They're all now adults, 46, 47, 49, 53 this year. And we're very, very proud of them. I would say to you that we have seen across our lifetime that as Gandhi identified nonviolence as love, compassion, that the beginning place for that is in the family, in our intimate relationships and kinships, that's where you can begin to practice and find the learnings and the gleanings that are available of nonviolence as a power. The reason I disaffected from the pacifist movement per se in the late 40s was because they said love is persuasive, but love has no power. Well, my experience in my own family with my parents and the congregation that surrounded us in Massillon, Ohio, had made me very much aware that love had tremendous power. It impacted my life. It helped to change and form my conscience. It helped to cause me to see the directions in which my life should move. So, in many ways, as I teach nonviolence and struggle with it in community activities today, I maintain that it is the psychical energy of the universe and of life itself. You do not have to be religious to be nonviolent. You do not have to be like a Gandhi or a charismatic person of some kind. But if you link life to your very birth and beyond, you can discover the power of nonviolence. It is a force more powerful. And I'm delighted to be here, and I'm very excited to meet many of you who have come for this institute this year of 2014. And so now let's honor the folk to whom this award are to be given now.
What we're going to do as we present these awards, there is a statuette here, basically a sculpture, as well as an award certificate. And Jim will present the award to each certificate when that moment occurs. What I'll do in sequence for each of these individuals is first to identify them and briefly why they're being recognized. And we'll show a brief video clip so that you can see them in action. And then we will, in fact, have them come forward and receive the award. The first individual today that we wish to identify and congratulate and honor for contributions to the use of nonviolent resistance in various notable ways, as well as for their own courage and heroism in actually participating in actions and leading those actions, is Yorm Bapa. She is perfectly emblematic of the natural action taker and leader of self-organized civil resistance that is occurring all over the world, right down at the grassroots, in confrontation with what might be called the ordinary oppressors of life, the people who take away from you your dignity, your home, your safety, or other aspects of the condition of your life, which ought to be part of public order and public experience everywhere. So there she stands in a sense, for tens of thousands of such individuals all over the world. But her own personal and individual contribution to her community have been of incalculable value. She came forth during a series of years in which the government of her country, Cambodia, ordered by force the evictions of dwellers in a community who had been in that community for many years and generations. They weren't asked their opinion about this. They weren't asked to ratify or approve this. They were essentially told, you've got to get out of here, and if you don't, we're taking you by force. And this radically diminished the population of this community. But as that began to happen, resistance brewed, and this woman came forward to help galvanize and also widen that resistance. And she brought with it, out of her own native intelligence, strategic and tactical ideas that posed serious dilemmas for the government of Cambodia. So much so that they arrested her, and she was imprisoned for 444 days, during which time she became a prisoner of conscience of Amnesty International, who helped raise her case to the level of international recognition. She is a natural teacher. She has a sense of presence in the moment, but she also has an interesting relentlessness. She is that emblem of a citizen leader without which there would never be any civil resistance. Certainly no civil resistance that would have reached this proportion of this phenomenon in the world today. So let's watch this little video and we'll bring her up.
បុផាកំសិន
ខ្ញុំដឹងខ្លះដែរថាដីនឹងក្រុមហ៊ុនស៊ូកាពូអ៊ីនគាត់យកអញ្ចឹង
ពេលនឹងបတ်ភ្ងា
អ្នកមីងគាត់ចេញតវ៉ានឹងយកទៀមទាយកដីជំរាបសួរខ្ញុំឈ្មោះលួលលីហួរអាយុ 9 ឆ្នាំរៀននៅថ្នាក់ទី 4 ត្រូវជាកូនរបស់ម្ដាយយ៉ាវបូផា
អញ្ញាធមបានចាំគូនបងចាំទៅ
ជាប់គុកចាប់ច្បាស់ដោយសាររឿងដីរឿងភ្លេងតែខ្លួនឯងហើយមានព្រះមហាក្សត្រចង់ពួកខ្ញុំគ្មានទីពឹងទេមានតែជាព្រះមហាក្សត្រទេជាមនុស្សដ៏លះដល់ពួកខ្ញុំមកនេះគឺជឿជាក់ថាបរមរាជវាំងនឹងជួយអន្តរាគមន៍ខ្ញុំអត់មានមកធ្វើអីទេពួកខ្ញុំមកសុំបងទៅសុំមកសុំ
ម្ដាយខ្ញុំជាប់ក្នុងពន្ធនាគាររយៈពេល 1 ឆ្នាំហើយខ្ញុំអត់ម្ដាយរយៈពេល 1 ឆ្នាំហើយ
ដោយសារ
Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Yorm Bapa.
Good afternoon, everyone.
ខ្ញុំសូមអរគុណយ៉ាងជ្រាលជ្រៅចំពោះលោកគ្រូ James Lawson និងមជ្ឈមណ្ឌលសម្រាប់អន្តរជាតិវិវាទអហិង្សា
I would like to extend my warmest thanks to Reverend Dr. James Lawson and the International Center for Nonviolent Conflict.
ដែលបានផ្ដល់នៅពានរង្វាន់ដែលមានកិត្តិយសសម្រាប់ខ្ញុំជាទីបំផុត
for honoring me with this wonderful award.
និងសូមអរគុណចំពោះវិទ្យាស្ថាន Fletcher ដែលបានផ្ដល់ឱកាសឲ្យនាងខ្ញុំចូលរួមនៅក្នុងព្រឹត្តិការណ៍នេះ
I would also like to thank the Fletcher Institute for giving me the opportunity to attend this event.
និងចែករំលែកបទពិសោធន៍ជាមួយក្រុមការងារនិងសិស្សដែលបានរៀនសូត្រពីជំនាញផ្សេងៗនៅទីនេះក៏ដូចជាមកពីបណ្ដាប្រទេសផ្សេងៗ
and share my experiences with fellow practitioners and learn from the many experts and students gathered here. ខ្ញុំបានធ្វើដំណើរយ៉ាងវែងចាប់តាំងពីបានផ្ដើមក្នុងនាមជាអ្នកដឹកនាំយុទ្ធនាការតស៊ូនៅក្នុងតំបន់ដីធ្លីបឹងកក់ I've come an extremely long way since I started my journey as a land rights campaigner in 2010. នៅគ្រាដែលខ្ញុំដឹងថារដ្ឋាភិបាលនិងក្រុមហ៊ុនចង់បានដីនិងផ្ទះរបស់ពួកយើង At that time all I knew was that the government was trying to take my house away. ហើយខ្ញុំត្រូវតែបញ្ឈប់ពួកគេទាំងអស់នោះ And I knew that I had to stop them. យើងមិនបានដឹងពីសិទ្ធិ
របស់យើងនោះទេហើយមិនបានដឹងពីរបៀបនៃការទប់ទល់ជាមួយរដ្ឋាភិបាលយ៉ាងណានោះទេ
I had no idea about my rights and how to stand up for them against the government.
ខ្ញុំមិនដឹងពីរបៀបដង្ហែក្បួនឬយុទ្ធសាស្ត្រក្នុងការតស៊ូមតិនោះទេ
I had no idea how to organize a march or even a campaign.
មិនដឹងអ្វីដែលហៅថាការតស៊ូមតិដោយអហិង្សាមិនស្គាល់សកម្មជនផ្សេងដែលមកពីជុំវិញពិភពលោកនិងការរងទុក្ខរបស់សកម្មជននៅលើពិភពលោកនោះទេ
I had no idea about non-violence or about all the other activists around the world who were struggling and suffering like I was.
ខ្ញុំក៏មិនដឹងពីមូលហេតុដែលនគរបាលអាជ្ញាធរវាយដំនឹងធ្វើឲ្យពួកខ្ញុំរបួសនោះដែរ
I had no idea that I would be beaten and injured by the police and the authorities that I thought were supposed to be protecting me.
ខ្ញុំតែងតែគិតថាអាជ្ញាធរគឺមកការពារពួកខ្ញុំទាំងអស់គ្នា
And I had no idea that my activities would lead me to be wrongly accused of a crime I had nothing to do with.
ហើយខ្ញុំដឹងថាសកម្មភាពដែលខ្ញុំបានធ្វើមិនបានធ្វើឲ្យខ្ញុំរងគ្រោះដោយការចោទប្រកាន់ខុសច្បាប់នោះទេ
And I had no idea that I would ever be spending 444 days in prison for a crime I didn't commit.
ដែលតាមការពិតខ្ញុំពុំបានធ្វើអ្វីខុសនោះសោះ
Given all that has happened to me and all of the painful lessons that I've learned,
រាល់អ្វីដែលបានកើតឡើងចំពោះខ្ញុំគឺជាមេរៀនដែលឈឺចាប់ដែលខ្ញុំបានជួបនៅពីបន្តបន្ទាប់
I've suffered through the learning, but
"ខ្ញុំមានសេចក្តីរីករាយយ៉ាងខ្លាំងព្រោះអ្វីដែលខ្ញុំបានធ្វើនឹងត្រូវបានចូលរួមនៅ Boston នេះ
But I am extremely grateful to have been invited here to Boston and to be recognized in this way.
អ្វីដែលសំខាន់គឺថាខ្ញុំមានសេចក្តីសប្បាយរីករាយយ៉ាងខ្លាំងមិនមែនការតស៊ូរបស់ខ្ញុំនៅតែម្នាក់ឯងនោះទេ
More importantly, I'm grateful that not only my struggle, but the struggle of my community in Bangkok has been recognized and rewarded on this international stage.
ប៉ុន្តែវាជាការតស៊ូរបស់សហគមន៍បឹងកក់ទាំងមូល
After years of ceaseless campaigning,
ហើយការតស៊ូនោះត្រូវបានទទួលស្គាល់និងផ្ដល់នូវពានរង្វាន់នៅលើឆាកអន្តរជាតិ
we have achieved a lot, but we've also sacrificed so much.
អស់រយៈពេលជាច្រើនឆ្នាំសម្រាប់យុទ្ធនាការឥតឈប់ឈរនេះ
And after all these years, we have still not achieved our goal.
យើងបានលទ្ធផលជាច្រើន
We're still waiting for the results.
ប៉ុន្តែយើងក៏ត្រូវការលះបង់នឹងការឈឺចាប់ច្រើនណាស់ដែរ
We've suffered a lot on our journey.
ហើយយើងក៏មិនទាន់បានសម្រេចនៅគោលបំណងរបស់យើងនោះដែរ
But we cannot stop our struggle.
ប្រជាពលរដ្ឋជាង 4,000 គ្រួសារដែលធ្លាប់រស់នៅតំបន់បឹងកក់នោះឥឡូវនៅតែ600ជាងគ្រួសារតែប៉ុណ្ណោះ
Of the over 4,000 families who used to live around the shores of Bangkok Lake, only 400 now remain.
ហើយក្រុមគ្រួសារអ្នកដែលនៅទាំងអស់នោះមានជីវភាពពិបាកនិងយ៉ាប់យ៉ឺនយ៉ាងខ្លាំងនិងធ្ងន់ធ្ងរ
And the families left over, as well as their livelihoods, have suffered severely.
ហើយក្រុមគ្រួសារមួយចំនួននៅមិនទាន់បានទទួលប្លង់កម្មសិទ្ធិនិងការវាស់វែងតាមច្បាប់និងស្របច្បាប់នៅឡើយ
And still there are many families that have not been granted their rightful land titles.
ប្រទេសកម្ពុជាប្រព័ន្ធតុលាការគ្មានយុត្តិធម៌
The court is not independent.
បញ្ហាដីធ្លីនៅតែរំលោភបំពាន
Land disputes are everywhere.
សម្បត្តិធម្មជាតិព្រៃឈើរ៉ែធនធានធម្មជាតិត្រូវបានបំផ្លាញ
Forests are being cut down.
និងពោពេញទៅដោយអំពើពុករលួយ
and corruption is rampant.
និងការរំលោភនៃសិទ្ធិមនុស្សនៅតែធ្ងន់ធ្ងរនៅឡើយ
And human rights violations are increasingly serious.
ច្រើនឆ្នាំកន្លងមកសហគមន៍ផ្សេងទៀតបានទទួលផលប៉ះពាល់ដោយសហគមន៍បឹងកក់របស់ខ្ញុំដែរ
So our struggle will have to continue. Over the years, many others have been affected, like Bangkok, by eviction or threat, and the loss of their homes, farmlands, and forests.
តាមការបណ្ដេញចេញដោយបង្ខំនឹងការគំរាមកំហែងហើយអ្នកទាំងនោះបានបាត់បង់នៅផ្ទះដីស្រែចំការនិងព្រៃឈើ
They too have shown the courage to stand up to the authorities and suffered the consequences of doing so.
អ្នកទាំងអស់បានបង្ហាញនៅការក្រោកឈរនិងប្រឆាំងជាមួយនឹងអាជ្ញាធរហើយក៏ត្រូវបានរងគ្រោះពីសកម្មភាពនេះជាញឹកញាប់ផងដែរសហគមន៍ទាំងអស់រួមមានសហគមន៍ថ្មគោលបូរីកៃឡាអតីតបឹងកក់និងសហគមន៍ផ្សេងទៀតដែលបានធ្វើការផ្លាស់ប្ដូរយុទ្ធសាស្ត្រទៅវិញទៅមក
Other threatened communities such as Tmogol, Borikila, the Tulsanka Railway, Road 347, we have shared our tactics and experience and worked together in solidarity.
ហើយយើងនឹងធ្វើការរួមគ្នាក្នុងកិច្ចការសាមគ្គីគ្នាជាក្រុមមួយការងាររបស់យើងមានភាពខ្លាំងក្លាតាមរយៈការចូលរួមពីសហជីពកម្មករអ្នកបើកម៉ូតូកង់3និងអ្នកធ្វើការនៅកន្លែងកម្សាន្តរោងចក្រនិងអ្នកបម្រើការនៅតាមផ្ទះនិងអ្នកតស៊ូមតិផ្សេងមួយចំនួនទៀត
We have also grown stronger through working together with many unions representing Cambodia's farmers, tuk-tuk drivers, entertainment workers, garment workers, domestic servants, and many others.
អ្នកទាំងអស់នោះមានសារៈសំខាន់ណាស់ដោយការបង្ហាញការតស៊ូមតិនិងទុក្ខលំបាកឡើងការរយៈពេល2ឆ្នាំមុន
Their strength, their solidarity, and their commitment to non-violent struggle is also being recognized here today.
ហើយបង្ហាញការបដិញ្ញាចំពោះការតស៊ូដោយអហិង្សា
And their commitment to non-violent struggle.
ហើយបានសាកល្បងលើកលែងផងដែរយុទ្ធនាការទាមទារសិទ្ធិរបស់យើងកាន់តែបន្តធ្វើឡើងខ្លាំងទៅនៅឡើយ
It is important to note that the struggle has become increasingly difficult as time has gone on, and our commitment to non-violence has been severely tested.
អាជ្ញាធរបានព្យាយាមបង្ក្រាបកាន់តែខ្លាំងឡើងដោយប្រើប្រាស់នៅវិធីសាស្ត្រជាច្រើននៅក្នុងសហគមន៍ផ្សេងក៏ដូចជាសហគមន៍របស់ខ្ញុំដែរ
The more we have risen up to seek our rights, the harder the Cambodian government has pushed us back down with increasingly violent tactics.
សហគមន៍ផ្សេងបានក្រោកឈរសាមគ្គីជាមួយនឹងសហគមន៍បឹងកក់
My communities and others who have stood with us in solidarity.
ហើយបានក្លាយជាគោលដៅសម្រាប់អាជ្ញាធរវាយនឹងប្រើប្រាស់ឧបករណ៍មួយចំនួនដូចជាកាំភ្លើងគ្រាប់បែកផ្សែងឧស្ម័នបង្ហូរទឹកភ្នែកនិងបានទទួលការគំរាមកំហែងចាប់ខ្លួននិងចោទប្រកាន់ខុសច្បាប់ជាបន្តបន្ទាប់
We've been subjected to beatings, the use of cattle prods, stun guns, water cannons, tear gas. We've been threatened, arrested, and wrongfully accused.
កាលពីឆ្នាំមុនជាពិសេសប្រជាពលរដ្ឋរាប់ពាន់នាក់បានចូលរួមតវ៉ាដោយអហិង្សានិងបានចង់ឲ្យមានការផ្លាស់ប្ដូរនយោបាយនិងអ្នកដឹកនាំ
In the last year in particular, many thousands of people have joined peaceful protests calling for political change or for better rights for workers.
ហើយខ្ញុំមានមោទនភាពចំពោះការខិតខំប្រឹងប្រែងនិងការបដិញ្ញាចិត្តរបស់អ្នកទាំងអស់នោះខ្លាំងណាស់
And I'm extremely proud of their courage and their commitment to non-violent protest, despite often extreme provocation.
ព្រោះអ្នកទាំងអស់នោះបានទាមទារយុត្តិធម៌ដោយប្រើនៅអំពើនិងយុទ្ធនាការដែលអហិង្សា នៅពេលផងនោះដែររដ្ឋាភិបាលបានប្រើប្រាស់គ្រាប់កាំភ្លើងពិតវាយប្រហារលើក្រុមបាតកោបណ្ដាលឲ្យមានអ្នកខ្លះស្លាប់អ្នកខ្លះរបួសហើយមួយចំនួនទៀតត្រូវបានចាប់ដាក់ក្នុងពន្ធនាគារ
But during that time, the government has used live ammunition against protesters on several occasions. Some have died and numerous others have been injured.
នេះហើយជាមូលហេតុដែលធ្វើឲ្យប្រជាពលរដ្ឋមានការផិតភ័យចំពោះការតវ៉ា
The rights to freedom of expression and assembly have been severely curtailed.
ប៉ុន្តែមកដល់ពេលនេះនៅ Boston យើងព្រមទាំងអស់គ្នាអំពីការតស៊ូផ្សេងទៀតជុំវិញពិភពលោកនឹងធ្វើឲ្យមានទំនុកចិត្តយ៉ាងខ្លាំង
And now in Boston, the rights to
មូលហេតុព្រមទាំងការតស៊ូផ្សេងទៀតជំរាបយើងមកជួបការតស៊ូផ្សេងទៀតនៅលើពិភពលោក Sorry.
Okay. Sorry. And even now in Boston, even the smallest and peaceful acts of protest are suppressed by authorities using needless acts of violence.
ហើយខ្ញុំដឹងថាការតស៊ូត្រូវប្រើរយៈពេលជាយូរឆ្នាំបន្តទៅទៀត
And now, after being in Boston, I understand that it takes time and we're going to have to use these non-violent tactics for longer.
ហើយយើងនឹងមិនបោះបង់ការតស៊ូរបស់យើងនោះទេ យើងអត់បោះបង់យើងអត់ឈប់
But we cannot surrender.
ខ្ញុំនឹងយកមេរៀនដែលខ្ញុំបានរៀនសូត្រនៅទីនេះដើម្បីជាបទពិសោធន៍សម្រាប់សហគមន៍បឹងកក់សម្រាប់បងប្អូននៅក្នុងប្រទេសកម្ពុជាទាំងអស់
But coming here to Boston and hearing about the many other struggles around the world has made me confident that this will not last. I've learned in the last few days that struggle may take many years and there may be many setbacks, but that we must not give up.
សូមអរគុណសម្រាប់ចិត្តសប្បុរសការទុកចិត្តនិងការគាំទ្ររបស់អ្នកទាំងអស់គ្នាហើយសូមឲ្យនៅតែមានការគាំទ្រនៅតែមានការតស៊ូមតិដើម្បីសិទ្ធិសេរីភាពយើងទាំងអស់គ្នា
I would like to take these lessons back to Cambodia and share them with my fellow activists so that we can encourage more people to join us and so our struggle continue. I thank you for your kindness, your solidarity and your support, and I hope for your continued support and struggle. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, good. From the foundation of one civil society to the level of all civil societies is the span from Yoram Botha to Kumi Naidoo. Kumi became acquainted with us at the International Center on Nonviolent Conflict when he was General Secretary of Civicus, which is the World Alliance of Civil Society Organizations around the world. And it was when our center was new, and so we tried everything, and we certainly wanted to go to, as we did, the Civicus annual meeting held for many years in Glasgow, and exhibited there, and we met Kumi, and without realizing it, we're taking the measure of the man for later purposes. And he is a unique figure in many ways because, in one way, he's a common figure increasingly in the world today, represented by many of you here today, in that he was, and of course remains, but importantly was, an activist in an extremely important movement against apartheid in South Africa. That's where he cut his teeth on nonviolent action. I don't think that he's ever had the taste of it out of his mouth since then, if I could hazard a guess. But his later career obviously came with it the recognition that potentially every civil society actor is also an actor in the use of nonviolent action or civil resistance. By virtue of the possibility, depending upon the conditions that he or she faces, that he will be met with repression, or that the pursuit of rights will be blocked or obstructed by a government in most cases. So that was necessarily part of his work with Civicus, and especially a part of his work as International Executive Director of Greenpeace, a position he began with in 2009. I think it's fair to say that Greenpeace is the most militant of the international organizations that use nonviolent direct action on behalf of people's rights or on behalf of larger causes, such as the present cause of diminishing threats to life and the environment. So it can therefore be said that he is a man of nature. But his nature, we think, is to organize, mobilize, and summon enthusiasm for the fight that he conducts, because it is a fight. So he is a force of nature, using the force of nonviolent action to force global institutions and states to mitigate both the forces of nature as well as the forces of opposition to save nature. All these things are related to one another, as they always are in great campaigns and movements and the leaders who are part of them. So let's take a look at Kumi Naidoo in action.
It is very important to engage in peaceful acts of civil disobedience, because the reality is that action speaks much louder than words. Yes, we continue to engage in dialogue, in research, in scientific work, in lobbying, advocacy, and so on. But it would appear, as history also shows us, that civil disobedience seems to penetrate the consciousness of our leaders much more powerfully than other methods. The struggle for justice, environmental justice, social justice, economic justice, gender justice, these struggles are marathons, not sprints. And I think history will judge that, in fact, the actions that we are taking right now are appropriate and proportionate to the scale of the threat that the planet actually faces as a result of unbridled environmental and social exploitation. Sometimes we might not necessarily win the demand immediately, but if the action brings people around the world to say, well, actually, as a result of that action, I've understood the issue, I want to get involved, I understand what's happening, then that is a contribution to an ultimate success that we can get down the line. Sometimes people suggest that Greenpeace is extreme and it's militant and so on. However, as our name suggests, we are equally committed to environmental sustainability on the green side, and we are equally committed to peace as a value and a virtue, and therefore non-violence is a non-negotiable for us in all that we do. Thank you very much for that very kind introduction. Dear brothers and sisters, I'd like to just say a very big thank you to the International Center for Nonviolent Conflict, the Fletcher School, which I'm happy to say that this is my second time coming here to participate in an event. But most of all, I would just like to say a very big thank you to James Lawson, because as a young anti-apartheid activist growing up in South Africa, one of the biggest inspirations to us was, in fact, the civil rights movement in the United States. Many of the songs that we sang, from We Shall Overcome to, let me not embarrass myself and get the titles of the other song wrong, but it was very much part of our struggle. But I should say to you that, you know, one of the things that I've learned is that sometimes people hesitate to get involved because they think they don't know all the facts, figures, data, and so on. And I think it's okay for us to tentatively get involved, even with limited knowledge, provided the basic tenets of what we are trying to address has been clarified. So I'll confess to you that I find it very strange when people talk to me about this global activist, because still I'm very, very much rooted in my experience of being a young anti-apartheid activist in South Africa. And I should tell you that the first act of civil disobedience I participated in was at the age of 15, when I led a anti-apartheid education boycott, you know, because we were protesting the inequality in education. And we didn't fully understand. At 15, I mean, you don't really know too much, other than knowing that white kids had big schools and big playgrounds and black kids had no blackboards. And so I remember the first march that we were on, the slogan at the front of the march that we were shouting was, "We want equality, we want equality." But by the time the slogan got to the back of the march and the younger kids were at the back, they were chanting, "We want a color TV, we want a color TV." Because kids in white schools had color TVs. And in fact, my most favorite slogan from that time was, "You pay," because this was a protest against the inequality in education, and the most favorite slogan, which I think Howard Barrell might remember, was, "You pay our teachers peanuts, no wonder they give us monkey education." So I want to say, though, that I'm deeply humbled to be here, but I think if there's one message that you should take away from an event like this, where individuals are being acknowledged, is that people like myself, who have had the privilege, really it's been a privilege and an honor to be asked to lead and to be part of leadership, must always remind ourselves that those of us who stand up here, or those of us who make the big speeches, or those of us who even go to prison sometimes, that in fact we are always backed by thousands and thousands of other people who will never be known publicly, who will never be recognized. And I can say to you, honestly, from the bottom of my heart today, if there's one message you should take away, is that people like me and my other honorees here today, we stand on the commitment and contribution and the passions of thousands and thousands of other unsung heroes and heroines. And so I'm very humbled here today to say that I see this recognition as really very much for many, many people who have been part of the things that I've been part of, who unfortunately have died in the course of the struggle, the various struggles that I've been part of. And today in particular, I thought a lot about my mother. My mum died when I was quite young, and I should confess that my dad actually at the moment is very ill in hospital. And I was thinking, one of the questions that came up in the lecture yesterday was how we deal with the question of fear. Because I think that that is the most important thing. That if we can get humanity to get to a point where the biggest fear that we feel is the fear of extreme injustice. That in fact injustice, whether it's climate justice, gender justice, and so on, we should be fearful that that's what we are handing over to our children and future generations. If we can generate that fear, then all the repression and what those with power throw at us will be able to deal with it. So I thought my mom died very young at the age of 38 when I was 15, but she left me with 3 one-liners, and I know in the United States you like one-liners, so I thought I should come up with some one-liners. So the one thing she said to me, and this has informed my life throughout, and what I want to say to you is that when you're looking for inspiration, don't look too far away from home. Inspiration is around the corner. It's sometimes in the next room. It's sometimes in the next class at the school. And so my biggest inspiration in my early years came from my mum, and I'll leave you with these 3 things. She once told me, it is much better to be honest and unpopular than to be popular and dishonest. I think that if all our political leaders could embrace that wisdom from a working class woman from a township in South Africa, I think the world would be a better place. The second thing she told me always was, it is so much better to try and fail than to fail to try. And I think that is one of the reasons a lot of us do not get involved in activism, because when we look at how big the challenges are, we think, oh my God, we'll never win. That's what our parents told us growing up in apartheid South Africa. They said, you guys, what you got? Maybe 1 or 2 small stones, not that we really threw stones actually at that time. You're dealing with the most powerful army in Africa, backed by the most powerful governments such as the United States and other European governments. You think you're going to be able to take them on. And so I think I want to, when I die, and the people around me ask me, so what did you achieve? I don't particularly want to say that I achieved too much. All I want to say is when there was injustice, I refused to remain silent, and I encouraged other people around me not to be silent. And let's hope that that absence of silence will lead to progress. The last thing, the third quotation, which is about religion, because I had a very charismatic teacher at school who had just converted to Christianity, and you know the converts to anything are the most passionate people after that, right? You know, even somebody gives up smoking, they are the most anti, you know. So I came home very traumatized one day because this very famous teacher that I liked very much said to me, the most popular, the best religion in the world is Christianity, and he was telling the Hindu and Muslim students in the class, you know, my God doesn't ask you to slaughter goats and sheep and so on. My God doesn't ask you to do this and so on. So I go home, I was like really traumatized. I say, Ma, my best teacher says that we're in the wrong religion. He said that Christianity is the best. I was about 9 years old. And my mother said to me, and this is something that I carry in my heart every single day. She said, my boy, all religions are the same. That the most important religious principle you can have is see God in the eyes of every human being that you meet. And always look for the strengths in others and the weakness in yourself. And I think that if our religious leaders today are serious about fulfilling their religious missions, they need to stand up and actually preach that kind of love, compassion, and understanding. I want to end with dedicating this wonderful award to all the people around the world who are standing up today, particularly for environmental justice, because today, every week, 2 environmental activists are being brutally killed. And that's a statistic not from Greenpeace, but from a reputable think tank called Global Witness. So for all of those people that are laying down their lives, I'd like to say, to dedicate this award to them. But in particular, if you can grant me an indulgence, I almost was not able to come here today because a very senior colleague of mine who has served Greenpeace for more than a better part of his life died on Friday from cancer. And his name was Ulrich van Vonsen. And Uli left behind 3 beautiful kids. And some of you might know the famous Greenpeace ship Rainbow Warrior, bombed in an act of terrorism by the French almost 30 years ago, and we rebuilt it recently. And Uli was the person responsible to see all of that, and I'm so glad that the Rainbow Warrior has been out there taking actions and so on before Uli had to say goodbye. So Uli, if you can hear me, I love and miss you, and as we all do at Greenpeace. I'd like to end with the words of Mahatma Gandhi when, and this is, by the way, my best friend who was murdered by the apartheid regime. These are the words on his gravestone. So I thought I'll end with this. We shall pass this world but once. Any good, therefore, that we can do, or any kindness we can show to our fellow human beings, let us do it now, because we may never pass this way again. Thank you very, very much.
The third individual who we will honor today with the James Lawson Award has made his life in the Academy. But those in the Academy can, based on the force of their ideas, their scholarship, and their teaching of what they have learned, influence millions of people, as we know. And this gentleman, Jacques Semelin, from Paris, developed unique analyses of forms of oppression, primarily in 20th century history, which have not only enhanced and enriched, but in many cases clarified to the point of being able to be more successfully retaught fundamental ideas that now inform our understanding of civil resistance. It's often said that the person who lives next door might be able to teach you about the neighborhood, but the person who lives in another country can help teach you about the world. And so when I went to Paris in the early part of the last decade for an event, I had been told that I had to go and meet Jacques Semelin, which I did, and was invited into his home and met other people in Paris who were passionate about nonviolent action and who were very interested in the television series that Peter Ackerman and Steve York and I had helped to create called A Force More Powerful, which in its French version, although they objected to its Quebecer French accent in the French dubbing of it, nevertheless, they loved as an embodiment in the form of historical struggles that they recognized would be of great assistance to them in teaching them. But I really learned by going there that his ideas and his work was actually going to be of enormous benefit to our organization and to our scholars. Jacques is a remarkable writer, in addition to being a remarkable theorist, and someone who we saw just this morning in teaching a class here at the Fletcher Summer Institute, knows how to get ideas across in an utterly clear manner, which is really rare in all walks of life and people using language in so many different kinds of contexts. So those of us who have to use language for a living have nothing but endless admiration for those who seem to be able to do it off the cuff. But I mentioned the preparation of the television series and the book, A Force More Powerful. His research, which led to the book Unarmed Against Hitler, Civilian Resistance in Occupied Europe, was ready for us to digest before we wrote that book and prepared that television series. The thing that struck me about it when I read it was, here is someone who I've never met when I first read that book. Here's someone I've never met, whose scholarship I'm substantially not familiar with, but who is writing about these conflicts as if I had written about them, which is to say his point of view, his point of recognition of the events that he was chronicling was in exact parallel to the work that we had been doing. And even then, in the years 1998, 1997, up to 2003-04, there was still enough national compartmentalization of scholarship as well as action in the field of civil resistance, that it was helpful to see someone else's moments of disclosure as contained in a work of scholarship that paralleled your own moments of disclosure. Confirmation that what you had been thinking, you weren't just out there on an island by yourself. There were at that time many islands, and the islands are forming a continent now of people all around the world who understand civil resistance and can teach it. And this individual has made an extraordinary contribution to that, not only through that one book, but through his seminal and path-breaking, really major work on genocide called Purify and Destroy: The Political Uses of Massacre and Genocide. I strongly recommend that you read that book because it goes to the heart of those who resort to those methods, so that whatever policies may be developed in order to respond to the doers of those acts of extreme violence can be informed by actually understanding what conditions they spring out of and alternative methods of responding to those conditions, to which in many cases they are a response. His two other major books, Freedom in the Airwaves, ICNC has helped to recently translate from French to English, and Howard Barrell, one of our academic advisors, who has met with Jacques, Howard is writing the introduction in the English edition, has given me an insight into the reality that Jacques was, even before Unarmed Against Hitler, speaking clearly about a phenomenon in civil resistance, as or more clearly than any among the rest of us. And this morning we heard him speak about his work answering the question, how did 75% of Jews in France in World War II survive? It turned out it was because of the work of ordinary people throughout France, in many ways engaging in the equivalent of nonviolent resistance. This is a friend of ours. This is a colleague of ours. This is a comrade in arms in the struggle to educate the world about the reality of how civil resistance can be effective. So let's see him in action. Over the video.
Pour moi, la résistance, même en ayant travaillé pendant des années sur ce thème, reste toujours une surprise. Pourquoi un individu va avoir la force un jour de se dresser contre un système qui l'oppresse? C'est peut-être d'abord une volonté de conquérir sa dignité. Et peut-être ce que j'ai un peu apporté, c'est mon approche à travers la société civile. La résistance civile, c'est, on pourrait dire dans une première approche, un état d'esprit. Je pourrais reprendre ça en disant que la domination physique d'un peuple, c'est un état de fait sous une dictature. Et sa soumission politique, c'est un état d'esprit. Et donc, l'enjeu de la résistance civile va être d'accroître ce fossé entre cet état de fait et cet état d'esprit. Et l'autre forme de résistance civile, alors c'est quand elle devient spectaculaire, quand elle se transforme en mouvement de masse. Et c'est en ce sens-là que un processus de résistance civile peut apporter un vrai bonheur, au sens où les gens se révèlent à eux-mêmes pour se découvrir, pour s'affirmer en public tels qu'ils sont. Alors bien sûr, la question c'est de savoir comment ils peuvent maîtriser et dépasser la peur, puisque la répression, évidemment, peut être au rendez-vous.
បុប្ផាកំសិន
So, Jacques. Sure. Microphone right here.
Thank you. I wonder where you have found these pictures. I don't know. I do not remember at all this conference. Anyway, I'm particularly moved and honored to receive this award, especially from you, James. Of course, I have a great admiration for Martin Luther King and all those who helped him in extraordinary struggle. My first thought is for Gene Sharp, because Gene Sharp has invited me to join his program on nonviolent sanction at Harvard University, Center for International Affairs, in the mid-1980s. Nothing could have been achieved without his academic and friendly support. And in this period, I also had the privilege to meet Peter Ackerman. I don't know where you are. Since I remember our conversation back in the power of nonviolent action and to challenge dictatorship and so on and so forth. So I want to thank him warmly, along with ICNC people, especially Jacques Duval and the others, and also I want to thank the Fletcher School for welcoming us here. This award, of course, is a distinction and a recognition of my work, my research on civil resistance in Nazi Europe and later in communist Europe. Now, allow me to take this opportunity to share with you, especially with you, James, a breaking news. Did you realize there is a book written by Martin Luther King which is still completely unknown? No. Okay. Of course, it's possible that this book could have been written by another author, but nobody is sure of that. Okay. And it is possible that Dr. King took sometimes, some moment for this project, since this is a short book, very short book. What's inside this book? On one end, it is a summary of the main principles of nonviolent action, and I'm sure ICNC will be happy with the way they are presented. On the other hand, it provides, I would say, helpful advice for promoting and practicing nonviolent education, really useful for families and social workers. So you wonder, what is this book completely unknown, So I perfectly understand. So I've taken this special event, to bring this book with me, okay? And here it is, Nonviolence Explained to My Children. You have a wonderful photograph of Martin Luther King, except this is not Dr. King, but Dr. Semelin. He's not. Well, we don't look like the same, right? Okay. Okay. So, did you know it, James? No. That's right. Unfortunately, I have just one copy because now it's sold out. I don't know. Anyway, you understand you have made a very good choice to offer me this prize, this award today, and I thank you very much. Okay?
Ready?
Yes, very much.
The fourth individual to receive the James Lawson Award today, an equal in his contribution to the work of all those who were influenced by both his teaching as well as the example of his activism, is not with us today, though he was dear to many people in this room. Howard Clark, a foremost scholar in civil resistance and a leader of the War Resisters League, War Resisters International in London. He passed away this last December, and that hit a number of people in a hard way, but brought to the surface of their thinking the realization of everything that he had done cumulatively in the course of his career and his life. He was not only a leading scholar of civil resistance. Just this morning, or rather this week, Maria Stephan, formerly a staff member of ICNC and co-author of Why Civil Resistance Works with Erica Chenoweth, mentioned that she was afraid that her numerous citations of Howard's book, Civil Resistance in Kosovo, even though she was careful to document every instance of use, might still cumulatively have amounted to plagiarism, because so stunning and so comprehensive was his capturing of civil resistance and how it was used in that country. Howard not only was a transnational activist, he wrote also the book about transnational activism, People Power and Global Solidarity, which ICNC stocks and offers to those who want to learn about that particular aspect of the use or support of civil resistance. And he was also a leading organizer in civil resistance, particularly against war and militarism, which was his passion and which got him arrested. He was a wonderful man, above all, and there are 4 other individuals who are with us today, actually 5, but initially I want to ask each of these 4 to come up and share with us their reflections about Howard Clark. And so will all of these people come forward now? Veronique Dudoué, Andrea Speck, Stephen Zunis, and Maciej Bartkowski. And so, Veronique?
Jack has just introduced Howard's great book, Civil Resistance in Kosovo. I first got acquainted to Howard when I read this book when I was doing my MA in Bradford. And I got so inspired by one sentence in the last chapter that I decided to do not only my MA dissertation on that, but my whole PhD based on that one sentence. And so I got in touch with Howard, and this was the start of a really long and intense exchange of engaged emails full of intellectual curiosity, full of provocation, full of activist energy. And later, Howard became a great friend and colleague. We worked on several projects together. We wrote a report together for the European Parliament. And I have to say that Howard represents what all of us should strive for. He represents, for me, integrity, passion, self-irony, the essence of activist scholarship or scholar activism. And his work and his life, which ended much too soon, and I still have so much to learn from him, his life and work have had a huge impact on the activist world and on academia, and I think that's what not many people can really claim. And yes, sorry.
Yeah, it's not easy to speak about Howard. Sorry, what Howard meant, because I met him 20 years ago when I first came to London to volunteer in the WI office, and he was so welcoming. And I think without him, I wouldn't have ended up 4 years later on the staff, or no, more years later on the staff of Royal Resistance International. And he was a brilliant organizer. He was a brilliant networker. I was always impressed about not only what he knew about the movements, but he always knew people in these movements you could connect to, which was so enriching in all the work, in all the networking we did, in the organizing of conferences. And then also when he was on council, he was chair of Royal Resistors while I was on staff, and he was always very supportive of us as staff and taking care of that we don't get burned out, that we take the time to look after ourselves. So he was brilliant on many levels, and I think I would be a very different person without knowing Howard. Thank you.
For years, I remember thinking, I want to be like Howard Clark when I grow up. And I first got to know of Howard long before I actually met him, when we were much younger and involved in radical pacifist causes, him in Britain, me in the United States. And his reputation even then was global. I soon figured out that I was a better intellectual than an activist, so I went into academia. But the amazing thing about Howard is even when he went to academia, he was still very much the activist, and being able to combine the activism and scholarship was remarkable. I really don't know anybody who could do both so incredibly well. I can think of many examples, but I think his work on Kosovo was very important, because a lot of people are very confused about that. I mean, there are a lot of people I often on the broader left that I often agree with, who on the one extreme were supporting the bombing, and on the other extreme were rationalizing for Milosevic. And here was someone who said no, that the oppression is wrong, but the war is wrong as well. And this is very much what Howard was about. He was not an ideologue. But he was passionate about his values, his commitment to peace and justice and nonviolence. He didn't care if what a particular movement or party would identify with, East or West or whatever. He wanted justice. He wanted peace. And I also know he was an amazing teacher. He and I were colleagues at the master's program in peace, conflict, and development at the University of Castellón. I just had a wonderful time, hanging out on the beach and Benicassim and sharing stories and being inspired and all the amazing things I heard from his students about what a great teacher was and what a huge difference they had made in their lives, not just in their academic lives, but in their broader work for a better world. And I just want to say to his children, Ismael and Violetta, you're going to hear, and I'm sure you've been hearing, a lot of stories about the people he impacted and the good work that he did. And I'm sure there's a part of you that says, well, are they just saying this to be nice because he was my father? Was he really that amazing? Was he really that influential? Yes, he was.
Howard was a great, inspiring person and excellent and unique scholar at the same time. I first time met Howard in 2009 when we were organizing one of our many academic seminars, and it didn't hurt that actually I was from Poland, because Howard was actually working for a number of years with activists, with political dissidents in Poland as well. And he was working with the movement called Wolność and Pokój, which is freedom and peace. So when I met him, we kind of hang around together, and that was the first time that I learned how jovial, how open he was. After probably 2 or 3 minutes of speaking with him, I could open my heart to him. I could tell him about all my secrets. That was the person that I was interacting with. And then he joined a number of academic seminars that we organized. And during one of them, I told him about the idea of writing a book that would look into forgotten histories of civil resistance. And he got enlightened. He was very actually inspired, because his scholarship on Kosovo was precisely about uncovering forgotten stories of nonviolent resistance that were buried beneath spectacular violence that happened later on and hijacked nonviolent resistance. So he became my mentor, my intellectual guide during 2 or almost 3 years of writing of the edited volume Recovering Nonviolent History. In essence, he became almost like a ghostwriter, and you could feel his presence when you are reading the book. He had not only that he had such great personality, but his depth knowledge about the different struggles all over the world was. I could only compare that knowledge to what Stephen has in his head, in terms of encyclopedic and factual knowledge about different struggles. So we are definitely at ICNC missing Howard, but we are inspired by his work and determined to carry on his work. We have created a page with the videos of Howard teaching during our academic seminars. I encourage every one of you to see those videos. This is the legacy that Howard left for us, and it would be living with us forever. Thank you.
To accept the awards, plural, for his family and also for war resistors, we have with us his partner, someone who is also very active, to say the least, in war resistors, and their children, Yolanda Juaro Barchenvilla.
Thank you again. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Let's do it together. Are we going to watch the video first, or?
Yes, please.
Okay.
So, well, welcome, Howard. I would like to ask you, first of all, why did you become a pacifist? How did that happen?
Well, it happened when I was 18. I fell in love with someone whose father had been a conscientious objector. And so we got talking about that in a way. Being English, I was never subject to conscription myself. I never had to make a decision about joining the armed forces, but her father, he had been a conscientious objector in the Second World War. He had, and she talked about what it was like for her family there, and it made me start thinking about it. And she and I, up to that point, had taken the position that I was against nuclear weapons, I was against wars like the Vietnam War that was happening at the time. But in some extreme cases, I thought probably it was necessary to take up arms. And she said, but do you think you can decide that? Do you think you can know what is an extreme case? And do you think you can make that judgment? And I thought, well, there are just too many unknowns. You're right. I can't make that judgment. And then I began thinking more about it and realised that each of these extreme cases that happens when people think war is justified actually could have been prevented. And what's happening is that people are always preparing for the next war, or always preparing for war, and then never developing the alternatives for war, never following the policies that would prevent war. And so one war serves to justify the next war. And each time that people make the decision, oh, this is an extreme case, there is nothing to be done, then nobody is experimenting with an alternative. And so I decided that I was going to commit myself to not just to opposing war, but to developing nonviolent action. If you're going to take nonviolent action, taking it together with other people is really important. So we have organised quite a lot of workshops around the place. I mean, the groups, the affiliates of WRI are quite often involved in what we call nonviolence training, which is not just preparation for nonviolent action, but it's also about thinking about how a group works well, making decisions about what kind of group you want, what kind of goals that you're going to concentrate on, and so on. Because it isn't just us in Spain, in Britain, in Germany, in Sweden, wherever we are. We're part of a corporation, and it can carry on. And so when we say war starts here, we're saying something about activity in our own areas, but also we're saying we here are part of an international circles of support who see that the multinational facets of war can only be challenged by a global consciousness. And I think this event will be a great contribution to that. Thank you.
Whose papers? Okay, right. So I am very, very pleased. We are all very pleased to accept this James Lawson Award on behalf of Howard. We are particularly pleased because it's an important link between James Lawson and Howard. There is a very, very special link, both being sons of Methodist ministers. Although Howard did not follow in his father's footsteps and become a minister himself, but his way of looking at the world was steered by the values of his father and his roots in Methodism. They were the bedrock from which his other beliefs grew. He held his beliefs and values very deeply, but also lightly, and with great humor. Like James Lawson, Howard was committed to the Gandhian principle that the end does not justify the means, and that how you went about generating social change was of fundamental importance. This meant that any social change had to include a commitment to nonviolence. For example, at the age of 11, Howard went to a Methodist boarding school. And we think talking to Helen, his sister-in-law, and reading the letters Howard sent from there, we think that is then when his tendencies shone already. Violetta is going to read a little paragraph of one of the letters Howard wrote at 11.
Every Sunday, I go running track with the boy who was beaten up. His name is Hall. He is extremely unpopular, and he himself is a bully. I didn't bash him up, but offered him a sweet after the fight.
So this was at 11, but at 18, he went to the University of East Anglia in England, where he became a well-known figure on the campus through selling Peace News, a pacifist newspaper first published in 1936, and of which Howard was later to become editor. In his first letter home from university, Howard wrote, Howard is going to smile.
My first consignment of Peace News arrived yesterday. There were about twice as many as I had ordered, but I have managed to sell all of them. I only hope the cause of pacifism will be furthered. One thing is clear, and that is that selling Peace News is a wonderful way of making the acquaintance of people. I am continually being accused of communism simply because I sell Peace News and refer to all those non-buyers who are as fascist scum.
Very direct. Right. This was typical of Howard. He wanted what he was involved with to be both relevant and fun. But at the same time, he was dealing with immensely serious issues. He was always looking to break new ground and show the relevance of nonviolence in new contexts and on different matters. As Kumi mentioned yesterday in his speech, he had a clear ideal, living with equal opportunities. All his writing pieces are about it, but his life was committed to reach these equal opportunities. As a pacifist, through War Resisters International, he was involved both. War Resisters International and Peace News took all his life from the age of 18 till 63 when he died. And his books you can find, but this nearly 20 years he spent in Spain, he was very much as well part of the Indignados, part of the Occupy soul in our neighborhood. Stephen knows our community. Where are you? Working. I remember he visited us during the fiestas, and during the fiestas, in the neighborhood, people would just sell drinks and food, but it's not by private bars or pubs. No, it's people. You get together when you really learn to sell sandwiches and drinks to everybody and mojitos. And this is the way we build the base to demand other things. And with the crisis and the cuts, reivindicating, fighting to maintain our public schools, Howard would be wearing a shirt like this every single day. He was very well known as this funny Englishman walking around the area wearing always this green shirt in favor of public education, what he wanted for his children and for every other children. And it's not only a question of education. The situation in Spain is so hard now that it's a question of having a meal a day. Now the schools are closing down for the summer, and many kids will not be getting that meal. We know so many people making a lot of money out of moving money from one country to another, buying, not buying, the debt, I don't know exactly what. But I know some people are becoming very rich, while at home, kids won't be eating a proper meal a day during the summer. And he was really involved in that as a father at school and in the area, and as well in many other things. For example, with trying to keep our National Health Service, which at the moment is universal, but because it's going to become business for some people, we're going to lose our rights. Health is nobody's business. And many years ago, Howard wrote something about a nonviolent anarchist approach that I want to share with you.
The first step in a non-violent anarchist approach is to question our own relationships, to assert yourself whether you're being trodden on, to reclaim your own life, and at the same time to take responsibility for your own actions, which may mean getting off other people's backs.
Violeta is going to read it into Spanish so that you can get the feeling of a global work of ours.
El primer paso para un enfoque anarquista desde la no violencia consiste en cuestionar nuestra propia forma de relacionarnos, afirmarnos cuando hemos sido pisoteados o pisoteadas, para reclamar nuestras propias acciones, lo cual podría significar que tenemos que apearnos, bajarnos de las espaldas de quienes nos transportan.
And finally, I want to mention one more group where Howard was very active, and it's the group Women in Black. Every last Sunday in the month, we get together in the main square in Madrid, and we stand for an hour in silence, a very active silence. Probably one of the most beautiful letters we've got, it was written by these women in black, who consider Howard one of them. And I think we've prepared as well a little bit in English and Spanish so that you can get the feeling what they have at the moment.
Now we feel the need to talk, to repeat the moments we shared, to remember the funniest and most special times in his company. Now, sadly, the silence has come to stay. It will be deeper than ever, but we won't stop talking to him during these silent moments, asking him still so many things.
Ahora sentimos la necesidad de hablar, de repetir las veces que nos vimos, de recordar los momentos más divertidos y especiales que pasamos a su lado. Ahora, tristemente, el silencio se ha hecho más largo, se prolonga sin tiempo definido, pero no dejaremos de hablar con él en nuestras horas de silencio, preguntándole tantas cosas.
So, to finish with, Ismael, Violeta and I, as well as his family in England and Spain, are very proud of him and feel that the best tribute we can all give him is to make sure that his work is continued. We are grateful that Howard's outstanding achievement in the study and teaching of nonviolence has been recognized in this James Lawson Award. It's a good start. Now, I have to tell you that every time we've been celebrating the life of Howard as much in Madrid, with lots of people all over the world coming to stay with us for a weekend, and as well in London with another big celebration of his life, we always finish singing, always look on the bright side of life, because it's there where we are going to find Howard. But maybe somebody wants to start with it. I can't. Thank you very much. Muchas gracias.
To everyone in this room and to everyone viewing on their PCs, laptops, or smartphones, thank you for sharing this experience with Yorm Bapa and Kumi Naidoo and Jacques Simelin and Howard Clark and his family. That concludes the James Lawson Awards. Thank you.